How's it going, folks? This is the first one of these I'm doing on the channel. Hopefully, there will be a lot more to come. I think Dieter and I are going to stick to our podcast. We got a nice plan coming up for the year. We're going to try and have quite a few consistent throughout the week, but there's stuff to break down. You know, for example, Brandon Aiyuk. I want to talk for 15, 20 minutes. Come here, post on my own channel. I'll try and have some more stuff here as well, but that's the preamble. Let's get into it. Brandon Aiyuk, everyone's got a lot of takes, right? Are the 49ers going to deal him? Is this, are they posturing? Is Aiyuk posturing? I think all of this comes from the fact that Aiyuk has not handled this well, right? The number one thing is, you can request a trade, you can do whatever you want. But Aiyuk waited quite a while to request a trade instead of doing it around the draft. And then he went on social media and did a lot of weird things where tried to sort of play up his leverage, all of this stuff. And then he shows up to training camp, which, can make things uncomfortable. And he protects his money, but he doesn't have the Trent Williams leverage. He has leverage, no question about it. And we shouldn't pretend that he doesn't. But at the same time, Ayuk is not as irreplaceable as Trent Williams. Like Trent Williams, if they don't have him, 49ers aren't going to win Super Bowl. You can say that definitively. Like Jalen Moore's not going to cut it. Jalen Moore can maybe fill up a gap for a second and hold up for a couple games. I think that's the best case scenario. But without Ayuk, I think the offense can still function. The 49ers believe that, which, in addition to some other reasons, is part of the reason they're saying we're not going to go to 30 million a year, even 28 million a year, and maybe they should. But I think where this stands right now is, in my view, the 49ers coming out and basically saying, not quite saying, but Matt Mayoko reported that it is the Browns and the Patriots yesterday who had offers the 49ers are considering. And today the Steelers are back in the mix. But I think the situation is I don't think Ayuk really wants to go to the Browns. I don't think he really wants to go to the Patriots. Um, there's no question that any team he goes to is going to be a worse competitor unless he somehow ends up with the Chiefs, which is not happening. So he's saying, okay, where can I go where I want to be there and I will get paid fairly? And I think he's made clear that the Commanders and the Steelers are kind of where he wants to go. And the 49ers are saying, okay, well, they haven't offered anywhere near what we want. And I think, you can look at this a number of different ways. I think what it comes down to is if you're the 49ers and you trade Ayuk now, you're getting worse. Like there's no real way to cut that. Ricky Pearsall can be great. He picked up another shoulder injury today, same one he had in OTAs. But Ayuk is an all-pro wide receiver. And I think because of the way this offense works and because he's not the biggest name, that's something that's factored into how he's reacted to all this, that he wants the attention. He wants to get paid because he doesn't think he is sort of appreciated or compensated or viewed in the NFL, maybe how he should be. And I think some of that's fair. I think Ayuk is clearly a top 10 receiver in this league. I don't think there's many better blocking receivers in the league. I don't think there's many better route runners. All around wide receivers, Ayuk is elite. And I don't think you can debate that. What I think the 49ers would think is, okay, is Ricky Pearsall ready to go where if we slot him in for Ayuk and say we bring in, if it's the Patriots, Kendrick Bourne coming off an ACL, if it's Amari Cooper, has to learn a new offense, is he going to want to do all the things that Kyle Shanahan demands? Whoever you bring in, it's not going to be Ayuk. It's not going to be at that level. And I think the bet this offseason has been, especially going into next year where you're going to pay Brock Purdy, and that's a huge part of this, is you want to make sure that Brock Purdy has all the weaponry at his disposal. So from that perspective, trading Ayuk, I think, just doesn't make sense. Now, if it gets to a situation where Ayuk says, okay, trade me to the Patriots, they're going to pay me $32 million a year, and I don't care. I'm going to go to this bad team, and I want the money and whatever. And the Patriots say, all right, we're going to give you Matt Judon. We're going to give you a third-round pick in Kendrick Bourne. And the 49ers say, okay, we're not totally sold on Leonard Floyd. Matt Judon, we know, is an elite edge rusher. And if we bet on that, our defense is going to make a substantial jump. And we say, okay, well, we can bring in Kendrick Bourne, we've got Ricky Pearsall, maybe Jacob Cowan something. I could see how they could say, all right, that's something that could work for us, right? At the same time, you're getting worse. Like I know Matt Judon's a stellar player, but your offense is getting worse. Ayuk is the only proven wide receiver who can stretch the field vertically, who can attack every route. I mean, you look at I forget who, I think it's reception perception. They charted it out. He's like one of the only wide receivers who succeeded at basically every route on the route tree. So I mean, I think everyone knows he's a good wide receiver. I don't think some people really know just how great he is, how well he can snap off the top of routes. But 49ers think Ricky Pearsall's ready to make that leap, and they don't want to pay all that money, especially with, Trent Williams is going to take a bump. He's got real leverage to work with. Um, and Brock Purdy's going to get 50 plus million a year. I think it's not going to be 60 million. I think it's going to be the 55 to 60 range, but they've got all that coming down the pike. And so I think regardless of where you stand on this, it's pretty inarguable that if you trade your top wide receiver, who's an all pro, who's 26 years old, one, that's extremely out of character for the 49ers. They tend to get these deals done. But I also think it's a reflection of how Ayuk handled his business, and he handled it in a weird way that I think has rubbed the 49ers the wrong way. And that's not necessarily a reason to trade him, but I do wonder, all of that said, all of these suitors out there, maybe a deal gets done. I mean, the rumblings are getting stronger, and it's sounding increasingly like, Ayuk gets dealt. I still wonder if 49ers said, all right, you can see what's out there, but you're not going to love it. You might get more than what we're offering you, but how much more of that is fully guaranteed? And maybe it's a lot, and that's what changes it, and a deal gets done. But I wonder if the 49ers think, okay, he's not going to love what the market has to offer. And he's going to say, all right, let's come back to the table. And they get something done where it's 27-28 and a decent amount guaranteed. I hope for Ayuk's sake, he's not debating, whether it's 27-28, 30, 29-30. I hope it's about money, fully guaranteed money. Because for that, if the 49ers are offering 40 and somebody else is offering 80 fully guaranteed, then I would do what Ayuk's doing. I mean, I wouldn't handle it the way Ayuk's handling it, but I would be pretty upset too. Um, all that said, you know, where does my gut come down on this? I mean, as much as everything is pointing towards a trade, I still feel like this weird gut feeling that it's gonna come back and it's gonna be like a $28 million a year deal. And I know that sounds sort of ridiculous with where things stand right now and just the way it sounds like he's going to get dealt. 49ers are open. It's been reported in a weirder way than 95% of these trade deals are. And again, I think a lot of that's on Ayuk's shoulders and the way he's handled business. But you're talking gut feeling, I'd say 55% maybe. He comes back and signs like 28 million a year, gets good guarantees. 45% he gets dealt. Basically, I know, basically 50-50, but that's where I'm looking at it right now. I'm sure all of you are just as exhausted with this as we are in the media just talking about Ayuk. And it's weird because he's a guy who's you talk to him, he's a lovely dude, pretty under the radar. And, I think maybe he's sick of being like, I'm not just the under the radar guy. I am an elite wide receiver and I want to get paid as some. And I just think he's handled this whole situation really poorly. I think the 49ers view it that way. And they're saying, if you're not going to be serious, or if you really, really want to play hardball, you better be ready to play it. And if you're not, come back and take our offer. That's where I think it stands. We'll see. I mean, I've talked to a bunch of people today. Everyone's up in the air on where it's going to go. Obviously, the suitors are the Browns. Rumbling that it's Amari Cooper. See about that. Steelers. Would they be willing to give up Pickens? Would the 49ers want a guy like Pickens who's a little bit unpredictable all over the place but has immense talent? I don't know. If it was me, being the freak I am, I would say I would tell the Steelers that they need to add Troy Fautanu. That way, the 49ers have an elite guard day one who can start. And then if Trent Williams doesn't come into camp, they can start him at left tackle. You've got an Aaron Banks replacement next year. You've got a succession plan for Trent Williams. I don't think the Steelers would do that, but I'm just saying that's from my galaxy brain take. I'm obsessed with Troy Fautanu. And I just think if you're the 49ers, you got to get a player of note that's just not a replacement level wide receiver and draft compensation, because the time to do that was around the draft. And then you have the whole summer to figure out exactly what your roster looks like. And doing it now, I think Tim Kawakami has been on a similar wavelength. You just don't do a deal now like this if you're a contender and expect that you're going to get better and that's going to help you compete, which is why my gut slightly still thinks he's going to stick around, as ridiculous as that may seem. All right, moving on. Let's talk briefly just about some injuries today. Amidst all this Ayuk nonsense, um, we had like some major injury, not major, but Christian McCaffrey, Elijah Mitchell, and Ricky Pearsall are all injured. I'll start with Pearsall because, as anyone who follows, Dieter and Hutch knows, we have been big on Ricky Pearsall from the start. I mean, people pinned him down as a slot receiver. I don't think that's fair to his skill set. I think he can play everywhere. Um, I think there's been mixed reviews on how he's done. When I've watched him, I've seen him snapping off at the top of routes. I saw him separate, and maybe not last week, not the last block of practices, but the practice before. He snapped off twice against Isaac Yiadom. Today, he had the catch of the day. He got 4 or 5 feet of separation between Diamador Lenore and George Odom for like a deep crossing touchdown. Brock Purdy put it right in the basket for him. But he tweaked his shoulder, which was something he had the blue jersey on in OTAs, and the 49ers pulled him halfway through practice. I mean, based on his reaction, he was not like holding the shoulder like crazy. He was smiling, talking to Deebo Samuel. I think that's something that ideally is minor. I think the 49ers probably don't think it's something too serious, but the fact that he tweaked it is notable. Had the hamstring thing. There is the thing that I think Herm Edwards said of you got to protect him from himself, and I think that's real because he overworks. We talked to Leonard Hankerson, wide receivers coach, and he told us that Pearsall is so hard on himself that I think we talked to Hankerson on Monday. And he told us, yesterday I was talking to Ricky, and he gets so upset every time he doesn't lose a rep. And he's like, it's not about the rep, it's about what you learn from the rep. And I know that's coach speak, but like Pearsall is competitive and he's probably too competitive. So I think if you're the 49ers, you need to get him on the field to kind of see what he's done. But you saw a bunch in OTAs, you've seen him a little bit, and I think the goal is get him, especially when you don't know what Ayuk is, where he's going to be at if you're going to trade him. You need to get Pearsall through camp healthy, and I think that's going to be the goal. So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe he misses these. I think they want him in these joint practices. They value that more than the actual preseason game. But if he misses a little bit of time and they're pretty safe with him, that wouldn't surprise me. Bigger injury news is Christian McCaffrey strained a calf a couple days ago. Shanahan said he didn't pull it, but he's probably going to be out of practice a couple weeks. Won't play in the preseason. That's something. I think he had the calf last year, and that really affected him a little bit down the stretch. I mean, that's something to keep an eye on. I wouldn't panic right now, but anytime you hear Christian McCaffrey injury, I think the 49ers are treating it the right way. They're just going to say, we're going to put you on ice. He's also an overworker. I think Pearsall can probably learn from McCaffrey on some of that stuff of just like, hey, there's sometimes you have to protect yourself. Or maybe he doesn't learn that from McCaffrey because McCaffrey hasn't learned that for himself. But that's notable. And then Elijah Mitchell strained his hamstring, which is like Shanahan said, probably going to miss about a week. Anytime it's Elijah Mitchell, I'd bet 2 weeks. He was out there rehabbing, but it's just like he looked so good down the stretch last year. I think it was the best he's actually looked since his rookie year. If he's hurt and that lingers, you got some question marks, especially with Isaac Orendo, who I still think is totally raw and needs to practice. He's out for a couple more weeks. You've got some questions at running back. It's a good time for Cody Schrader, who unfortunately is running behind like a third string offensive line that's trying to get him killed every time. It's really brutal. I think I saw Jordan Elliott demolish Nick Sakel 3 times today, and he beat him so bad one time that Jordan Mason, like he almost fully tackled Jordan Mason just because he couldn't stop. Like he beat Nick Sakel so bad that he was just on top of Jordan Mason and he couldn't stop himself. and there was real contact there. So that third string O line, I mean, no one has a good third string O line, but like it's been rough to see. Um, yeah, last thing, I guess, from today, other notes that I saw, D Winters is still looking good. Um, Pearsall started hot, had that deep ball to, Purdy had that deep ball to Pearsall, started hot. Only had, I think, two incompletions to start it. He had one bad interception where he just underthrew Chris Conley. Diamador Lenore undercut it. But otherwise, I've been really impressed with Purdy. Um, he just looks how he's looked before. He looks great. Um, I have no reason to believe he's going to be any worse than he was last year. I think not rehabbing is reason to believe that he will be better. But then the question is number two: is it Josh Dobbs? Are they going to go with Brandon Allen? I thought Dobbs looked terrible at the start of camp. I thought he couldn't get guys organized on the line consistently. He was having to look over, and there would be a tight end or a wide receiver saying, "Where am I supposed to line up?" Like every single practice in a way that you didn't see from any other quarterbacks. Um, and I was pretty harsh on him. Like he was throwing scuds and duds and just missing left and right. He's looked really good lately. Today he hit Jacob Cowing on a little sit, in the red zone period. It was a dart, I think it was forget. I'm remembering people by numbers. Number 26 slot corner came and he just nailed it right in there in that window. And then he had like a back shoulder over the top touchdown throw to Debo that was really impressive. I'm getting more and more impressed with Dobbs. Um, I'm not sure how the 49ers will handle that situation, but I suspect they keep both and just see who looks better. Maybe Brandon Allen is the guy that in a pinch, and the 49ers are leading or they want to pull Purdy, he's the guy. And Dobbs is a guy where Purdy misses any extended time. That's where they go because he's got more upside. We'll see. But outside of that, D Winters, again, I mentioned it. He looked pretty good. He's all over the place. I saw a great blitz pickup on Fred Warner. Jordan Mason just stonewalled him on a blitz up the middle, and Warner like took a second to get up because he got rocked. And he thought he was just going to get a free release on the quarterback, and he got rocked by Mason. I think the last thing I did want to mention, um, and maybe I'll get better at these. Maybe these will get cleaner as we go throughout the year. That's the ideal. 3-4. So Brandon Staley ran a 3-4. Leonard Floyd is familiar with it. Leonard Floyd's not looked all that great in camp. He didn't look great at the end of last year. 49ers said, well, he's been productive. Brandon Staley likes him, so we'll bring him in. Now, if they bring in Matt Judon, that kind of tells you all you need to know about where Floyd's at. I think Yetur Gross-Matos has shown them a lot, but it's not a very deep edge group. It's got four guys. It's got Nick Bosa, it's got Yetur Gross-Matos, Leonard Floyd, and Robert Beal. Drake Jackson is nowhere to be found. He's, out for the foreseeable future on PUP. Didn't sound, very rosy from Kyle Shanahan. But one thing we talked to Daniel Bullock, safeties coach, yesterday, and he and some of the other coaches, they've been like relatively open about they have some interest in using 3-4 a lot more often. The 49ers have really, really rarely ever done that. Bosa's peeled off a couple of times. You've seen him drop in a coverage and everybody sort of loses their mind. I think you do. There's a lot of reasons you do that. If you are peeling off a defensive end that people are expecting to rush, just totally changes the calculation for an offensive line. And if you expect them to shift to Bosa and he peels off and then you can overload the other side, that's a very simplistic way of looking at the advantages. But Bullocks was like, yeah, we definitely, it's something. We have the 3-4 package. Staley is a great coach. He knows it well. And we've got a lot of guys who can run it. And I think that's something to look at. And so I asked Nick Bosa today, how comfortable would you be if the 49ers ran a little bit more 3-4 this season? And Bosa sometimes can just be blunt and short and not really answer your question. And that's fair. They have to talk to media quite a lot throughout the year. But Bosa didn't do that. He said, I'm liking our changeups that we're doing. In the NFL, you have to evolve every year, and we've had a lot of success with what we do. Teams are starting to game plan it, have answers for us. So we have to evolve, and we're doing that. And I think we have a lot of athletic defensive ends. And then he said, I don't mind dropping into coverage. It's kind of fun. Not something I do often, but it keeps him honest. And it could end up getting you more sacks by them not knowing exactly what we're doing. That's pretty straightforward that the 49ers are going to run a little bit. Maybe it's not a lot. Who knows how much they're going to actually run it. But they are very clearly signaling they are not just going to run wide nine every single down. And they got gutted. There's been a couple times over the last few seasons. They had that 3-game run in the middle of the year, starting with the Browns, where they just got screened into oblivion. But the run defense has gotten worse. And they've gotten a little bit more predictable. And I think what Bose is saying is teams are aware of that. Teams are aware of the 49ers are taught get the hell upfield, get after the quarterback, and oftentimes that leaves room for mobile quarterbacks to escape. If you're too aggressive, it can mean check downs and dink and dunk plays are actually explosive plays. The Browns showed that. So I think what Bose is saying is, yeah, if we keep offenses honest and then we can run what we actually run normally, and mix it up, and maybe I can not hit a sack floor, actually get more production, be back in defensive player of the year contention. Absolutely, I'm game for that. But it's notable because that's the first real time I think Bose has in the past been like, I would like to stick to defensive end traditionally. His brother obviously worked with Brandon Staley, so that's a factor too. I'm sure Joey was like, "No, these are the upsides of doing this." So I think that's something that you talk about what schematic wrinkles could Staley add in, flashing coverage. Could they blitz up the middle, leave defensive tackles in, and peel off the edges and play them in coverage? Listen, you don't want to do that every down with Nick Bosa, but if you're confusing offenses and they don't know what's coming, that's as complex as the 49ers will have ever been for the last, half decade. So I think that's something that's really interesting. Going to be looking forward to that and seeing just exactly what they do with it. At some point, I meant to include multimedia in this. I meant to go through some other stuff, but listen, it's been a chaotic few days of 49ers HQ. We're going to take this slow. We're going to work this channel up. For any of you sickos who follow me and Dieter and following me over here, I appreciate it. I'm going to have stuff, obviously I write for 95.7 Odyssey. All that stuff's going to be going up. Dieter and I are going to work on our schedule. And once the season opens up, I think you guys are going to like what we have planned. And then again, whenever there's news to break and Dieter and I can't hop on, I'll come here and I'll try and break it down. And ideally, assuming life doesn't get in the way, which it usually does, I'll try and do a few breakdowns. And any weird stuff guys are obsessed with, I'm an open book. If you want to reach out to me, hit me up on Twitter at Hutch Diesel. All the links are in the bio. So hit me up there, follow us here, and appreciate any of you who are following along. And let's do some more of these.